So this topic is all about leading others through change, and we're going to, or helping others through change. It's not just leading, it's really supporting others through change as well. We're going to look at really the main themes today, and this is one of 3 in a series of change subjects that we're going to do, and they're linked around. Those of you who know I wrote a book on change, they kind of link around that. There's 3 sections to the book, so they grow on each other, but they also stand alone. So we're going to look at why some people resist change or find change difficult. We're going to look at these concepts of a change superhero, or if you don't like superhero, you can think about it as a change expert or someone in that respect. Understanding people's different reactions to change. So how can you help people through change and understand their natural reactions, and really how can you help people to buy into change? And I thought it's quite a good topic to do in autumn. We're just getting to the point where it's getting slightly chillier, so it's one of those things that go in and think, how can we get the best out of people? Wonderful. Now I'm not going to try and pronounce your name, but I know that's quite a long name of where you come from. So welcome from Bain. I'm trying, but I'll have to not go further. So welcome everybody. I thought there were people from all over, so you're all really welcome. Thank you for joining. So moving on here. Those of you who's been before know who we are, but my day job, I introduced myself, but many of you have met me before, but my day job is also CEO of Actus, as well as doing training. If you don't know, Actus offers performance management software, learning management software, 360 management, and compliance. So we're all about building a better workplace for people. And if you want to know any more about that, please do get in touch. And equally, Laura's going to drop those in. One of the things is we put lots of things on, like webinars. It's great to have great numbers here. We've got lots of quality thought leadership and content available. So if you want to see that, including we're starting a nice little Actus Academy series coming up with some quite nice little videos and things. Do follow us on social media. So Laura will drop those in the chat to make it really easy for you. So keep an eye on the chat. We'd love it if you could follow us on social media so we can get more directly in contact with people. Now, just kicking off the topic of the day, I'm going to pop a poll up, and I can see lots of you are L&D. Interesting to know whether or not you like change or hate change. So let's get that. So I've launched hopefully a quick question, which is basically saying, do you love or hate change? What's your usual response to it? The interesting thing I often believe is the sort of people who come on something like this, you are coaches, you're development people, that sort of thing. QA, okay, I know QA. And often I think people like that are more keen on change than the average person in the population. So see whether that comes out or not as we go through this. Anyone else want to go? So we're 100%. Well done. Fantastic. Let me share the results. Yes, so we have got 42% really like change, so like to keep things moving. 55% of you are quite neutral about it, and only 1 or 3% is sort of really doesn't like change. Really good to have that self-awareness, isn't it? In terms of that, and it does depend on change. They often say actually the adage is people don't resist change, they resist being changed, which I think is quite an interesting one. And that's actually one of the key ways of helping people to go through change, is to help understand why it's needed, or to buy into it, to help people come to terms with it, depending on whether it's a good change or a bad change. So yes, I think that this is not necessarily representative of the entire population, in my opinion, that's the case, because I think lots of people actually really strongly dislike change. But many of you here are learning and development people, the sort of people who are helping others through change. And so that makes sense to me that you're quite open to it. So why do you think, in the chat, tell me, why do you think people resist change in your experience? Do feel free just to use the chat briefly and let me know what you think. And I'll pop a few answers in. Why do people dislike change, even though no one here does? What sort of things? Absolutely. Oh, fear, absolutely. Straight on there. Unknown feels uncomfortable. Uncertainty, totally don't know what to expect. So uncertainty of the future. Yeah, some people just you want to be in their comfort zone. Absolutely, Heather. Sometimes it's just not communicated clearly. Nancy's saying some people just feel a bit stuck in their own habits. People get into a rut, don't they? And so you've got to be motivated potentially to change. can be scary. And ambiguity is a very good one, Susie, there, because actually, yeah, sometimes people don't know clearly what's expected. So it's not been communicated clearly. Absolutely. Loads of really, really relevant reasons why. I mean, one of the things for me is they're not motivated to change, and that's some of these the reasons that you said there. So maybe they don't understand or agree with the why. That hasn't been clearly explained to them. So they feel it's too uncertain, or they don't know what to do. Maybe they don't see there's any benefit to changing as well. Maybe there's no consequence to not acting, and the status quo is more comfortable. As I think someone said, there's many of us are creatures of habit, and status quo is much more comfortable, because forced with uncertainty, why are you going to choose to jump into the unknown unless you're really motivated, you've got a really good why? So one of the things, if you are working as a change agent or working with someone to deal with change, is this is called the change equation. And I was introduced to this, and I thought it's quite interesting. If you want to help people to achieve change, you need to make sure that the change equation is working for people to be motivated to do so. So first of all, you need to actually feel that where you are currently, this nice comfort zone, the status quo, isn't maybe ideal. It's not satisfactory to you sufficiently. So you might feel dissatisfied with the level of status quo, or we need to, as change agents, help people understand that maybe it's not ideal for the future. So it may be okay now, but it's not ideal in the future. You need to have an attractive future. So where you're all saying uncertainty, absolutely. So people need to have clarity, and it needs to look attractive for things. I mean, you've got this burning platform, which is not the nicest of things, but to choose to jump off a burning platform into the North Sea, it's not really an attractive future, but you're very dissatisfied with where you are currently. Now, obviously, in the real world, we don't want to create horrible examples like that, but it's this concept of, am I sufficiently dissatisfied with where I am now? And can I see clearly a more attractive future is what we really want. Then there's something about how easy or difficult is the change. Can I do it quickly? Because actually lots of change is about creating new habits, and you need to repeat it. So you can't do it necessarily overnight. And then finally, what's it going to cost me in terms of personal and financial? So if you think about people, simple things like people dieting, so they might not be happy with their body shape or weight at the moment, and they might think there's a really attractive future self that they can see, but is it easy? Is it something? It's not like they can click a switch and be their model self overnight. So how easy is it, and what's the cost? Are they prepared to put in the slog, whether it's eating differently or exercising, to do it? And you can see that any one of these can sort of pull back the other. So as change agents, we need to try and help people see a more attractive future, or buy into that more attractive future, or understand that if they carry on as they are, although they may not feel dissatisfied with how things are right now, they can't remain the same forever, because you might need sort of almost future pace where things are going. So these are things that we've got to bear in mind when we're working with people who don't really like change, because they are going to be more comfortable sitting with the status quo. So we have to try and motivate it. And that change equation can be quite useful to bear in mind, because you could work through each of those. John's a coach on here. You work through each of those and see whether or not one of those is more powerful than the others for people, or see which areas you can tweak up, which might help somebody buy into change. So it might be you work with someone to help them see that making the change could be easier than they think, or it hasn't got a high cost personally. And part of the skills of doing that for me is about thinking about yourself. You're all change agents in this organization, and these are the 5 superpowers that I think we have to develop if we're to help others through change. Now, I'll go through each of them in turn, but just briefly, so there's 5 C's. The second one is a little bit of a stretch because it's all about connecting with strategy, but the word connect. So courage, connect with strategy, corroboration, communication, and collaboration. And I'm going to go through each of those. And as we go through them, I would challenge you to think of which of these you do naturally, and which of these might you want to bolster or learn to do more of these skills, because these are really useful in terms of being able to help others buy into change, get on board with change, whatever it might be. If you're an OD person in an organization, you might be your responsibility to get people to understand and buy into change. So the first one is about courage. Now, I don't know why you think, whether you might think why you might need to be courageous. Anyone, any ideas why you might feel you need to be courageous about change? as a change leader or a change superhero. In order to be courageous about change, for me, it is about being self-aware about where you feel comfortable. I mean, these elements on here, self-awareness, self-control, self-motivation, empathy, and social skills, you might recognize those as part of emotional intelligence. So having the courage to work out where you have bought into the change yourself. If you, in terms of, do you buy in or don't you buy in? Do you feel comfortable with it? Self-control is, let's say there's a change happening in your organization and you don't really like it personally. You have an emotional response to it because, of course, as leaders, you absolutely do feel that way. But it's making sure that you sort of stay on message. So self-control doesn't mean not saying anything in terms of that. And it doesn't mean not responding or not asking questions of those who perhaps are imposing the change or engendering the change. But it does mean that you are able to be positive about it or constructive about it and to have asked those. So you don't have demonstrated an emotional response to those you're trying to lead through. Absolutely, Mike. So to lead people through change, he says you've got to put yourself out there to potentially be shot down on questions. Absolutely. So this is where the courage comes from. I completely agree. So you've got to have that self-control to put yourself out there. And sometimes it's like, don't shoot the messenger, you're a messenger. But you need to be prepared to say, so this is the message and this is the business rationale. So that takes courage to stand up and be counted. You also got to have empathy and social skills, and that comes through into the communication skills we look at later. But yes, so being courageous, it's standing up and being counted. It's saying this is a change that has to happen. Sometimes it's a change that we don't enjoy communicating or sharing with others, but we have to be brave and help people understand the rationale for the change. It also means we need to know where our strengths and weaknesses are, what our tells are. And it might sometimes mean we have to challenge people that maybe are senior to us. I mean, I've definitely had situations in my past when I've been in an organization where I know that certain senior leaders perhaps don't have self-control. And so we're trying to impose, there's something that's trying to be rolled out that needs to happen. But, you know, a senior leader can say something which can stop people from changing at a blink of an eye. So sometimes you have to challenge them up front. So I've had examples where I've sat down with someone saying, look, being on message means saying this, this, and this. And it means not saying this, this, and this. So you've got to be quite brave and have good interpersonal skills and relationships with people to challenge them like that, to be courageous, to make sure that the leaders and the sponsors, because actually, although we call this change leadership, very often the people on this call, like you and me, are the people who are sort of in between. So we're not necessarily imposing the change, but it's our responsibility to help it land well. So being courageous, being brave, knowing that we're on message, being prepared to challenge people if necessary, obviously with courteousness and politeness. The second C is about connecting with strategy. And this links to that change equation, if you think about it. So it's helping people see the future. So what is the positive future that's going to help people buy into the change and why they should do it? So to be motivated to change, people need to understand why it's necessary. And the way we can do that as change agents is help to paint a picture, a vision as to what the future looks like and a sense of meaning. And then to break it down into clear, achievable goals. Lots and lots of you said that people don't like the uncertainty. And that's where there just isn't a clear enough vision, or they're saying that, you know, we're going to move offices, but people don't understand exactly what's going to change for them. So there's not enough in terms of, it might be, you know, we're going to save money or we're going to have a lovely brand new building, but then there's lots of uncertainty as to what does that mean for me in terms of my commute or my office or who I work with. And maybe there's too much vagueness or ambiguity around it. So what we need as change agents is to help people buy into that vision and also be prepared to try and provide certainty where there isn't certainty. Sometimes you don't have all the answers, but often what people do when they start resisting change is they just focus on what's different. So sometimes we as change agents can basically say, okay, so we are going to get a new office. We don't know exactly what the floor plan is going to look like, but I can tell you it's going to be in this location. And I can tell you, you will still be working within this team and it will be this commute. So you can help focus people on the things that are remaining the same as opposed to them being blown away by what's changing. So connecting a strategy, help people understand the why, then also join that into an attractive vision, ideally. yeah, and a sense of purpose as to why you're doing it. Even if the vision isn't necessarily attractive, let's say it's a redundancy situation, you can still explain why it needs to happen. You know, in terms of a meaning, if we're going to be able to be productive or survive as an organization, we need to make sure that we, you know, we're not making a loss or whatever it is. So people understand why something's necessary. So although it might not be our panacea, lovely vision, we know why it has to happen. And then we need to be able to break it down into achievable goals. Now, on to corroboration. So when we corroborate something, we provide evidence to make it a reality. So for me, this is where we're going, sometimes people don't want to just take your word for it. Now, it's not just one person's word. So corroborating something is providing evidence as to why this is necessary. Now, sometimes that's quite hard because you're talking about a vision. So the examples that I use for here are Patrick Lencioni's influencing information. And actually, I might have got that wrong. That's Lencioni. It's Daniel. I'll come back to me. It's the wrong one. So someone will correct me. Is it got Daniel Goldman? No, that's EQ. I may have got it wrong. I might have got it right. I'll provide a correct link when we send these out. And if anyone wants the slides, everybody on the call, you will get the slides and the recording sent out to you. But you've probably heard of influencing skills in terms of this. And there's lots of research as to certain things that you can do to be more influential. So when I work with people on change training, for example, we talk about, rather than very dry emails saying this is what must happen, we use different influencing aspects. It is Cialdini. Thanks, Eleanor. So there are things that if you're writing an email, sometimes we've had experience where it's a kind of, you must do that. You have almost a mandate. This is happening. It's very logical, but doesn't take into account all the emotions that people have around change. So there are things that you can do. So appealing to authority might be an example of the health and safety executive have said that we have to do something different in order to meet the requirements of this law. So authorities would be the FCA or the government or whatever it might be. Something like that kind of helps you enforce that something has to happen. It could be authority in an organization. Social proof is an example of where we might look at things like case studies. So the business down the road has just been hugely successful because they moved to this new building or whatever it might be. Or reciprocation. So reciprocation is the model of, actually, if you're asking people to give away something, what can we give them in return? So it's not necessarily going to be the same thing, but it's all about these different ways in which you can make change more palatable to people by basically evidencing the need for change, using authority or otherwise, but also making it more palatable using influencing skills. If you're offering corroboration, so evidence as to why this needs to happen, whether it's the health and safety executive, then it needs to be relevant. So, Carol over in America may not be that bothered about what the CIPD have to say, but it's an SHRM, which is the local body for HR over there, is going to be more relevant in her area. So we need to make sure that it's something that's relevant to our organisation. And if we're corroborating, we need to vary it and make it nice and creative and interesting. Then the two final C's are about communication and collaboration. So to be an effective change agent, you've got to be a great communicator, and that is verbal and non-verbal. So you need to be able to build rapport with people, to be likable, for them to trust you. You need to be a good listener, because if they are reacting to the change, showing an emotional response, you need to show empathy and listen to them. You may need to flex your communication style, use different terminology, use different mediums. And this term deletion and distortion is an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming term. So sometimes you'll hear people sort of saying, they're wildly generalized about something, or they'll take a tiny bit of the change and they'll slightly distort it out. So you need to be prepared to reinforce the change, the right language, being on message. If things are being distorted, say, I can see why you think it's like that, but actually this is the reality. So keep on reminding people so that the change message is clear. And often in large scale changes, it can really become Chinese whispers. So trying to make sure that those sort of things are corrected. So with empathy and with good communication skills, but try and make sure that the message that's out there continues to be accurate. And then collaboration, you can't make change happen on your own. So you've got to work as part of a team. You want to get other people to come with you. So that's about being open-minded to different people's responses and behaviors to change and helping them along it. using positive, encouraging language, we being upbeat about things, obviously empathy, people are sad about it, but try and get people to think about the future. And I like this concept of a change league, where you're working with others. It's very much, we're in this together, we've all got a shared vision, and we're all on the same message, is what you're after. So those are our 5 C's. And if you remember at the start, I said I'm going to put it out to you as to which of them you think is a natural strength for you, and which one do you think you'd like to do more about. So both of those, hang on, is it going to let me do it? I've got to unlaunch poll. Poll has been launched, okay. Sometimes Zoom is too clever for its own good. No, user error. One more second, I'll just get you to do it. Okay, change superpowers. Is that launched? Can you see it? I'll see if any responses go on. It has launched. Can anyone see it to respond? Oh, hooray. Right, thank you. Sorry, I obviously had to finish the other one. So it'd be better if we're able to do this visually, because it's quite a few that's on here. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds. 70%. Excellent. Okay. Quick countdown. 80% participated. So 3, 2, 1. End the poll. Share. So it's interesting for you to compare with others. So fairly consistent. Communication is the overall strength here, and then collaboration. Then connect with strategy, courage, and corroborate. That's usually the lower one that people haven't thought about before. So being more influential in their communication and providing evidence for change. And again, that makes sense then, that quite a chunk of you think, actually, we could do more about that. How can I be more influential, more convincing of people? Connect with strategy, the why, and the courage. Absolutely. It's almost the inverse, which makes total sense. So good, just think about, you can't change everything, but those are all skills that we can develop and be even better at. So once you're then dealing with people going through change, then they go through something called the transition curve, which I imagine that a number of you have come across before. Perhaps let me know in the chat if you've come across it or used it. So this is a simplified version of the transition curve. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a lady who focused on bereavement, people going through bereavement, and she has kind of a specific set of emotions that people go through, and this is sort of a business application of it. Yeah, it's quite a nice little summary. So there's also infographics and things that Laura's putting things into the chat for you. So the idea is that at the start of change, regardless of whether it's positive or negative, we go through this sort of predictable journey, and you can go backwards and forwards through this curve potentially. Right at the start, we're in denial. We may not know the change is coming, or we're not really open to it. We're not really thinking about it. We're kind of in the past, but you can't really tell that we're in denial because we're not talking about it. We're just maybe thinking it'll go away. Then as we kind of start thinking about the change more, we might move into a stage which we call resistance. Now, the interesting thing about this for me is that as a change agent, people who are in resistance can feel way more painful to us than people who are in denial. But actually, it's a positive. And that's something I really, really recommend you remember. Because if people are telling you what they don't like about the change or asking difficult questions, then at least it means they're not in denial. So from denial going to resistance, then hopefully you don't get depressed, but the people can get a bit stuck in a kind of no man's land. But the difference between resistance and exploration is almost the type of question. So resistance and exploration are more visible. So they're when people are actually talking to you and sharing information. So exploration is more future focused. And you might find people are kind of going from resistance to exploration for a while. So resistance might be where I'm kind of pretty much stuck in the past and I'm focusing on what used to be, but it's not going to be the same as that. And I can't, you know, why is it going to be like this? Or what's going to happen to my job description or my role or the things like that. But that can then flip into the future as to, you know, what opportunities might there be, or will I be able to? So there's sort of questions become from the past as to, you know, this will never work type of conversation, to what opportunities or how can I use this information, where it's more exploratory. And then once people move out of that, commitment is actually quite quiet as well. So that's when people, they're just getting on with the change. They've bought into it and they're going. The tricky thing for us as change agents is seeing the difference between denial and commitment, because they're both quite quiet. And so it's very easy for us to assume that people are on board, i.e. in commitment, when actually they're deep in denial, and they're far from commitment. And that's one of the reasons that changes don't work, because we don't make sure that people are actually on board with something. So using that same model, here's just an example. Here, if you're bringing in a software system that we're using here, so this might be using our performance management software. So at the start, new system, they're used to using paper. In their head, they're going, I don't need to do anything really. No one checks if I've logged in. If I keep my head down, they'll move on to the next thing and I won't actually have to change my behavior. So there's thought bubbles going on in denial. Resistance is, I haven't got time to do this. What's the point of doing this if there's no one's doing anything with the data? Okay, so they're actually starting to complain about having to do something, being forced on the training. Then if you go into exploration, it's like, oh, where would I log this? Or who sees my information? Or could I use it for X, Y, Z? Or how can I find out more about the functionality? So they're much more future positive focused. And that's where someone's starting buying in. These are the people you want to maybe get on board with helping you be change agents. And then finally, commitment is they're actually using it, they're doing it, you know, they found ways of using it, but they're not necessarily shouting about it. So you can see the difference. And as you're helping people through that curve, it's being aware of what's going on. It's helping people physically through the resistance and exploration when you're talking to them. So when you're working with people in these different stages, this is a sort of slightly different behaviors you need to do as you're leading them through that change. So if they're in denial, you might want to sort of check where they are. So you're thinking they're in denial, or are they in commitment? So you might just say, oh, how do you feel about the change? So actually get them to ask about it. So challenge them and say, you know, what's your thoughts on the change? Get them to say something. And, you know, set clear expectations. Well, this is what's going to happen by when, so that they know it's not going to go away. If they're in resistance, where they're kind of going, oh, it's not going to work, then help them buy into the vision, right? And empathize. So, you know, you want to motivate them to change. Think about that change equation. Paint a positive future vision. And, you know, if they're losing something, they're sort of yearning something, they're sad about something, you know, show empathy where they're uncomfortable about things. You've still got to be clear that it's going to happen though. Then onto the other side, if they've gone into exploration and it's kind of actually just helping, it's responding to the questions, helping them to buy in, maybe actually that's where you spot things that could be better as well. So empowering people, supporting them and answering those questions. And then finally, commitment. Those people who have got on board with it, absolutely recognize them, you know, celebrate that, bring them into the change, utilize their energy to help bringing others through. So those are the ways in which you recognize those different stages you can help bring people through. So on to my last summary about leading through change. And this is one of 3 webinars, by the way. So there are others where we look at organizational change at a large level and also how to communicate change. So we'll do more on that communication. These are my 8 steps just to summarize here. So first of all, make sure we're clear about what's expected. What's the clear vision of the future? You know, take away that uncertainty, be clear about the things you can be clear about. Make sure you know why the change is there, and what the benefits of it are, and ideally at a right level. So, I mean, there may be benefits for an organization. What could the benefits be for this particular group of people that you're working with? Be clear about the consequences of doing nothing. You know, status quo has to be challenged sometimes, and sometimes carrying on doing the same isn't going to work. Well, quite often isn't going to work, which is why change is necessary. So right now, doing nothing might be okay, but if we're still doing that in 18 months' time, we're going to be in real difficulties. Use multiple communication channels and use sponsors who are on message. Listen to people and address their concerns. You know, be prepared just to listen and take those on board and then help to manage them. Be very clear about expectations. Don't let people think it's going to go away. So keep on communicating it. Recognize those who've gone through to commitment, the success, they're using something. publicly, but if people are not getting on board, follow up non-compliance in the first place discreetly. So celebrate from those people who are really buying in and shared case studies of where they've used a new system or whatever it is really effectively and it's saved them loads of time. Those people are clearly not getting on board. Go and take them to one side sort of separately initially. If change has been in place for a long time, then it's slightly different. But you know, that's always good, sort of reward, recognize publicly, follow up sort of non-performance privately. So those are my 8 steps. I hope those will be useful. Maybe if there's something that you've got any questions or otherwise, please put them in the chat. What I'm just going to do, I've got something which is a special offer. So I wrote this How to Be a Change Superhero book we launched it during COVID, so about 3 years ago. And it's quite exciting because the publisher that I published with is actually going to do, they've a sort of second edition, but they've taken a shortened version of it. So it'll be out in November. So I thought it would be nice for me to do something to reinvigorate the original. So if you are interested, people on this podcast, and I'm not going to be able to do endless numbers of them, but if you're interested for your organization, I thought I would potentially offer a book club offer. I was inspired by someone else who did this. So what that could be is 3 sort of 45-minute lunch and learn sessions with 12 to 16 people in your organization. I wouldn't charge for those, but what I would do is I'd ask that you at least got them to buy and read the book or listen to the audiobook. So if you're interested in something like that, message back when you get your message out from Laura, and I'll have a chat with you as to whether you want to do something like that. If you want to do more formal training, I do have a How to Be a Change Superhero training course as well. And then finally, just a couple of other things just to make you aware of the special offers that we do send out. We have our Actus 360 now. We also have an offer there if you wanted to experience 360 feedback, where we can do a report. We actually have a Change Superhero report. So if you wanted that one, you could. And that's available for just at 175. You get your own one, and then if you wanted to do others, you can. Well, Gemma, get in touch because you're straight on there. You're the first to go, so you're down as first there. So 360 now is a really good one, and we do management training as well. So we've all got these things where we've got short options as well. So that's the full Change Superhero training that Laura's popped in there. So those are the plugs, just making you aware of what's available as we go into autumn. It gets to be a really busy time in terms of training. So get in there if you're interested in taking advantage of some of those. And I hope you're going to join me for the next 2 in the series, maybe bring others along. Next one's about planning and managing culture change, but it'll be about communicating change as well, and then leading organizational change, where we look at the Cotter model, which is really powerful. All of these are going to come out to you. We'll send the slides out. So all of these resources and links are available to you. And as we said earlier, do get in touch, link in with me, and do follow us on social media, so you can see when we're doing these things. We're thinking about all the exciting things that we can do going forwards in terms of content. It's always good to reinvigorate it. So thank you so much for joining me today.